Okay, so in this video, we're going to be going through 5D, which is all about multiplying and dividing expressions, our learning intentions, to understand the meaning of x squared and x cubed, to be able to multiply terms and simplify the result, and to be able to divide terms and simplify the result. I'm going to break this lesson up into two parts. In this first part, we're going to go through these first two learning intentions about multiplication, and then in the second part, we'll go through dividing. Okay, first thing, we're just going to remind ourselves that in algebra, we don't like writing expressions with a multiplication sign. So if we were to write the following without the multiplication sign, instead of writing 7b, 7 times b, we'll just write 7b. Instead of writing y times 27, we will just write 27y, remembering to put that number to the front. And then over here, instead of writing b times 8 times a, we would write 8ab. Perfect. So we've seen this before. What we're now going to do is move on to something a little bit more challenging. So here it says simplify the following. And we have 4 times a times 2 times c. Well, the first thing that I notice here is that I have two numbers, 4 and 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this, but I'm going to change the order. Now, remember that with multiplication, we can change the order without changing the result. Let me just quickly give you a demonstration. 3 times 4 is equal to 12, and 4 times 3 is equal to 12. The order of the multiplication doesn't matter. So that means I can change the order of this. And I'm going to bring my 2 and my 4 next to each other. So I'm going to get 4 times 2. Then I'm going to have times a times c. Now, what's 4 times 2? Well, 4 times 2 is 8 times a times c. And now I'm just in the same situation as I was up here. I can write this as 8ac, and that's my answer. So you can see what I did here is I multiplied together my numbers, and then I just put my pronumerals next to each other. Let's now do this one. If I wanted to, I could insert my multiplication symbols back in here. So it's 3 times 4 times w, because I know that between the 4 and the w is an invisible multiplication sign. Now 3 times 4 is 12, and then I could just write this as 12w. So as you can see here, what I did was I simply multiplied the numbers together and then put the pronumeral at the end. So too over here, if I wanted to do this the long way, and after a while you're not going to do this step, but what you could do is say, I know that between this 4 and this a is a multiplication sign, like that. Then I have this times, then between those two things is a multiplication sign. Now I could bring together my numbers, so 4 times 2, then my pronumerals next to each other. 4 times 2 is 8 times a times b, so I'm going to end up with 8ab. Perfect. Now, after a while, what you'll realize is, hey, I'm just multiplying all the numbers. So 3 times 2 is 6, 6 times 5 is 30, and then I'm just putting all my pronumerals next to each other. So what you'll realize is that these steps here aren't necessary. You can go straight from there to there, straight from there to there, straight from there to there. You don't need these steps in between. You can go straight to the answer. Okay, so let's now make things a little bit trickier. So this time we're going to go through similar examples, but now dealing with powers. So again, simplify the following is our instruction. Now a times a, that's a squared. Now I just want to pause here for a moment because there's a mistake that lots of people make. A plus a is equal to 2a. A times a is equal to a squared. So that's really important. A times a is a squared. A plus a is a plus a is equal to 2a. So just be careful with those. Okay, let's keep on going here. And I'm again going to go through my slow method. I'm going to insert back in the multiplication symbol here. So it's 3 times t times t. Now, t times t is t squared, and I still have this 3 here. So I'm going to end up with 3t squared. That's going to be my answer. So too over here, if I was to do this the slow way, it would be 3 times k times 4 times k. Now I could move together my numbers. Then I have k times k. 3 times 4 is 12. This is going to be k squared. So that means I'm going to end up with 12k squared, and that's going to be my answer. After a while, you're going to realize that you can do this a lot quicker. See over here, instead of doing all these steps, we could have just gone 3 times 4 is 12. K times K is K squared. We could have gone straight from there to there. So to over here, we could have just gone 3 times 1 is 3 and T times T is T squared. Well, if I was to now do this one quickly, I could say 6 times 2 is 12 and H, and then I've got T and T, which is going to be T squared. Let's now do the next one. And again, we can do this slowly or we can do this quickly. We could just go 3 times 2 is 6. Then I have 1A, I have 1B, I have 1C, and I have 1G. Those are my answers. Yet again, we have this one. And this one is, I have 5 and 2, which is 10. 10 times 3 is 30. So I just multiplied all the numbers. And now I could say I have 1A, I have 1B, I have 1C, and I have 2 F's. So I have 2 F's multiplying each other, so that's F squared. And that's my answer there. Let's come here. I have 4 times 2, which is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. I then have 1K, and I have 2 T's, T squared. Let's now come here. I have 3 times 2, which is 6. 6 times 4, which is 24. And 24 times 2, which is 48. So I just multiplied my numbers together. Now I have 1A, I have 2 B's, and I have 2 C's. So that is going to be my answer. Perfect. Let's now move on to some more examples here. And now we're going to introduce some more powers and also signs as well. Let's do this question here, and let's do it the slow way. So I'm going to insert back in my multiplication symbols. So in between the 3 and the T here is 3 times T. Then I have another times T. Then I have times 2, and I have another times in between those. Let me now move together my numbers. So this 3 and this 2. So it's 3 times 2. And now, as you can see, I have 1, 2, 3 T's. 1, 2, 3 T's. Well, I know that 3 times 2 is 6. Now, what is T times T times T? Well, if we go up here for a second, if we know that T times T is T squared, well, if I now have another T being times there, it's going to be T to the power of 3, or we call this T cubed. And my final answer, therefore, would just be 6T cubed. That's my answer. Let's now move over here, and we're going to do the same thing. But as you can see, this time we have an x squared there. Let's again do it the slow way and add in all our multiplication symbols. So it's going to be 3 times x times. Now, x squared is the same thing as x times x. X times x is x squared. So now you can see I have 1, 2, 3 x's being multiplied by each other. So that's going to be 3 times x cubed, which means my answer is going to be 3x cubed, just like that. Let's come over here, and you can see that I have 4 times m times k times 2 times, now I have m squared, which is the same as m times m. So I'm going to bring together my numbers, 4 times 2. I then have a k, and then I'm going to bring all my m's together as well. As you can see, I have 4 times 2, which is 8. Then I have k. Then I have m times m times m, which is m cubed. Now, just as before, we're doing this the slow way. A much quicker way to do this is simply saying 4 times 2 is 8. I have 1k, and I have 1, 2, 3 m's. So we could go straight from there to our answer. This working here isn't necessary. All right, so let's come down here now, and we're going to introduce the new idea of signs. So as you can see, this is negative 3t multiplied by t squared. Okay, so if I have negative 3t multiplied by t squared, what exactly is happening here? If I have a negative number multiplied by a positive number, I know that my answer is going to be negative. So immediately, because I have one negative here, I know that my answer is going to be negative. And then we're just going to treat this as we normally would. I have a 3, and then I have t times t squared, which is going to be t cubed. So the real takeaway message here is realizing that because I have one negative term, my answer is going to be negative. Now we come over here, and as you can see, I have a negative multiplied by another negative. Now this is important. Negative times negative is going to be positive. So I immediately know that my answer is going to be positive. And then we just answer our questions normally. So 3 times 4 is going to be 12. And then I have z squared times z, which is going to be z cubed. So here the important thing was realizing that my negatives are going to go away because there's two negatives being multiplied together. All right, here we have another example with lots of negatives. Again, I think the best way to do this is just to do these two first and then worry about this one at the end. So negative 2w times negative 7t, well, two negatives. When two negatives multiply, I know I'm going to get a positive. 2 times 7 is 14. Then I've got w and I've got t. Now I'm going to multiply that by negative 2w. Now when I'm multiplying a positive, which is this one is, and a negative, I know my answer is going to be negative. 14 times 2 is going to be 28. Then I have two w's, so it's going to be w squared and then t. Perfect. Let's come down here now and let's do these ones a bit quicker. We're going to go 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Then I have 1x, 2 x's, x squared. Then I have a y and I have a z. So that is going to be my answer. Let's now come over here. I have 2 times negative 6, which is negative 12. I have h squared times h, which is h cubed. Then I have m times m, which is m squared. And that's my answer there. Lastly, we have this one. I have negative and a negative, which are going to cancel out and become a positive. 3 times 5 is going to be 15. Then I have x times x is x squared. Then I have a y, and then I'm multiplying that by 2yz. 15 times 2 is going to be 30. I have x squared. I have one y here. I have one y here, there, which is going to be y squared. And then I have a z. And let's just double check this. I have 2 x's, x squared. I have 2 y's, y squared. I have 1 z by itself. 3 times 5 is 15, times 2 is 30. That's going to be my answer. Perfect. So that's all I'm going to talk about in terms of multiplication. In our next video, I'll go through simplifying fractions. So I just wanted to break it up so you don't get all overloaded on one idea. So in this lesson, we have simply gone through knowing what x squared and x cubed mean, and being able to multiply terms and simplify the results. Hopefully you found this useful, and I'll see you in part 2 of this lesson.